17-year-old Madison Carter stood in the marble kitchen of tech billionaire Victor Ashworth's Manhattan penthouse, holding a delicate porcelain teacup filled with chamomile tea. Her hands trembled as she approached the mahogany door of his private study. What she was about to do would change everything, not just for her and her mother, but for the most powerful man in Silicon Valley. Because that tea wasn't just tea. And what happened in the next 60 seconds would expose a truth so shocking that it would topple an empire, save a life, and reveal a family secret that had been buried for 23 years. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The October rain pelted against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Ashworth penthouse, 47 floors above the bustling streets of Manhattan. Madison Carter pressed her forehead against the cool glass, watching the city lights blur through the water droplets. At 17, she had learned to find beauty in the chaos below, especially on nights like these when the weight of her mother's illness felt too heavy to bear alone. "Maddie, honey, could you help me with Mr. Ashworth's evening tea?" Elena Carter's voice drifted from the kitchen, weaker than it had been just a month ago. The cancer was winning, though neither of them spoke about it directly anymore. Madison pulled herself away from the window and found her mother hunched over the granite counter, her once vibrant auburn hair now thin and dull beneath a silk headscarf. Elena had worked as Victor Ashworth's head housekeeper for 15 years, maintaining his pristine penthouse with the dedication of someone who understood that perfection was not just expected, it was demanded. "Mom, you should be resting," Madison said, gently taking the silver tea service from her mother's shaking hands. "Dr. Morrison said—" "Dr. Morrison says a lot of things," Elena interrupted with a tired smile. "But bills don't pay themselves, and Mr. Ashworth expects his chamomile tea at exactly 9:15 every evening. Routine is everything to that man." Madison had grown up in the shadows of Victor Ashworth's world. While other teenagers worried about homework and weekend plans, she had spent her after-school hours learning the intricate rituals that kept one of America's wealthiest men comfortable. She knew he took his coffee black at 6 a.m. sharp, preferred his newspapers ironed flat, and never ate anything that hadn't been prepared in his own kitchen. She knew he suffered from chronic insomnia, which explained the nightly tea ritual, and that he had built his tech empire from nothing after his parents died in a car accident when he was 19. What she didn't know, until 3 weeks ago, was that her mother had been slowly poisoning him. The discovery had been accidental. Madison had been organizing her mother's medications when she found a small vial hidden behind the prescription bottles. The clear liquid inside looked harmless enough, but the label made her blood run cold. Digitalis glycosides, a heart medication that, in the wrong doses, could cause irregular heartbeat, confusion, and eventually death. When Madison confronted her mother, Elena had broken down completely. Through tears and trembling words, she revealed a truth that shattered Madison's understanding of everything. Victor Ashworth wasn't just their employer, he was Madison's father. 23 years ago, Elena had been a young journalism student working part-time as Ashworth's assistant while he was still climbing the corporate ladder. Their affair had been brief but intense, ending when Elena discovered she was pregnant. Ashworth had been engaged to socialite Catherine Mills at the time, a union that would secure crucial business connections for his struggling startup. When Elena told him about the pregnancy, he offered her money for an abortion and a generous severance package to disappear from his life. Elena had taken the money but kept the baby. She had never contacted him again, never asked for support, and never told Madison the truth about her father. But when the cancer diagnosis came with a prognosis of 6 months and medical bills that would bankrupt them, Elena's desperation had transformed into something darker. "He owes us," Elena had whispered that night, her eyes hollow with pain and rage. "He has billions, Maddie, billions, and we can't even afford the treatments that might save my life." So yes, I've been giving him small doses. Not enough to kill him, just enough to make him sick. Sick enough that maybe he'll finally face his own mortality and do the right thing. Madison had stared at her mother in horror. Mom, this is murder. You could go to prison. I could lose you even sooner. You're going to lose me anyway, Elena had replied with devastating finality. But maybe this way, you'll have something left when I'm gone. For 3 weeks, Madison had carried this knowledge like a stone in her chest. She watched her mother grow weaker while continuing the poisoning, driven by a twisted sense of justice that Madison couldn't understand, but also couldn't entirely condemn. She watched Victor Ashworth during his rare appearances in the penthouse, noting how he looked paler, how he sometimes pressed his hand to his chest as if his heart was racing, how he had started keeping a closer eye on his health. Tonight felt different, though. Elena had prepared the tea with unusual care, measuring the digitalis with a precision that suggested this wasn't just another small dose. When Madison asked about it, her mother had simply said, "It's time to finish this." Now, standing in the kitchen with the poisoned tea growing cold in her hands, Madison faced an impossible choice. She could deliver the tea and become complicit in what might be her father's final poisoning. She could refuse and watch her mother face the consequences alone. Or she could find a third option, one that terrified her more than either alternative. She could tell Victor Ashworth the truth. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 9:10, its deep bronze notes echoing through the silent penthouse. In 5 minutes, Ashworth would expect his tea. He was currently in his study, as he was every evening at this time, reviewing market reports and preparing for the next day's meetings. Madison knew his schedule as well as she knew her own heartbeat. She looked back toward her mother's bedroom, where Elena was resting, finally succumbing to the exhaustion that she fought so hard to hide during the day. The woman who had raised her alone, who had sacrificed everything to give Madison opportunities she herself never had, who was now dying slowly and expensively, while the man responsible for her existence lived in luxury just down the hall. Madison picked up the teacup, her decision crystallizing with each step toward the study. But as she approached the mahogany door, she stopped at the small powder room nearby. Her reflection in the mirror revealed features she had never questioned before: the sharp jawline, the unusual pale green eyes, the way her hair caught light, the same way she had seen in old photographs of a young Victor Ashworth. The similarities were subtle but undeniable once you knew what to look for. She set the teacup on the marble sink counter and reached into her pocket. Pulling out her phone, with trembling fingers, she opened the camera and began to record. "My name is Madison Carter," she whispered to the lens. "It's October 15th, and I'm about to do something that will either save a life or destroy everything I've ever known. If something happens to me tonight, if I disappear or if there's an accident, I need someone to know the truth about what's been happening in this house." She turned the camera toward the teacup, the innocent-looking chamomile tea that contained enough poison to potentially kill a man. "This tea contains digitalis. My mother, Elena Carter, has been poisoning Victor Ashworth for 3 weeks because he's my father, and he abandoned us 23 years ago. Tonight, she's given me what I think is a fatal dose to deliver to him. I can't let her become a murderer, even if he deserves to know what it feels like to face death the way she is." Madison stopped the recording and uploaded it to a cloud storage account, sending copies to her best friend Jenna and to her mother's lawyer. If this went wrong, at least someone would know what really happened. She picked up the teacup again, but instead of heading to the study, she walked to the kitchen sink. The pale liquid swirled down the drain like a decision being made. From the cabinet, she pulled out a fresh cup and the tin of chamomile tea, preparing a clean, harmless version. As she worked, Madison's mind raced through what she was about to do. She was going to walk into that study and tell Victor Ashworth that she was his daughter, that her mother was dying, and that she had just prevented his murder. She was going to ask him to look at her, really look at her, and see the truth that had been hiding in plain sight for years. She didn't know if he would believe her. She didn't know if he would care. But she knew that she couldn't live with herself if she let her mother cross a line that would destroy them both. The clock chimed 9:15 exactly as Madison knocked on the study door, carrying a cup of tea that would change everything, even though it now contained nothing more dangerous than hope. "Come in," Victor Ashworth's voice carried through the mahogany door. Crisp and authoritative even at this late hour, Madison stepped into the study, a room that had always intimidated her with its towering bookshelves, original artwork, and the massive desk where billion-dollar decisions were made daily. Ashworth sat behind that desk now, his silver hair perfectly styled despite the hour, his steel-grey suit jacket draped over his chair. At 54, he maintained the sharp elegance that had graced countless magazine covers. "Elena's resting," Madison said, setting the tea on the leather-inlaid desk. "I prepared your tea tonight." Ashworth looked up from his tablet, his pale green eyes, so similar to her own, scanning her face with the same analytical intensity he applied to market reports. "How is your mother feeling?" The question caught Madison off guard. In all her years of living in this penthouse, Ashworth had rarely acknowledged her existence beyond polite nods. His sudden interest in Elena's well-being struck her as oddly timed. Madison hesitated, watching as he reached for the teacup. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Mr. Ashworth, I need to tell you something important." He paused, the cup halfway to his lips. "Is this about your mother's condition? I've been meaning to discuss increased health benefits. She's been poisoning you." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The words hung in the air like a confession at a funeral. Ashworth set the cup down slowly, his expression shifting from mild concern to sharp attention. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" Madison's legs felt unsteady, but she forced herself to continue. "For 3 weeks my mother has been putting digitalis in your evening tea. Tonight she prepared what I think was meant to be a fatal dose. I dumped it out and made you fresh tea instead." Ashworth stood abruptly, his chair rolling backward. "This is a very serious accusation, Madison. Are you certain about what you're saying?" "I found the vial hidden with her medications." "She told me everything." Madison pulled out her phone, showing him the video she had recorded. "I documented it because I was afraid something might happen to me when you found out." As Ashworth watched the recording, his face grew increasingly grave. When it finished, he set the phone down and studied Madison with new intensity. "Why would Eleanor want to poison me? I've employed her for 15 years. I've been generous with her salary, her benefits, because you're my father." The declaration struck the room like lightning. Ashworth's composed expression cracked, revealing something raw and vulnerable beneath. "That's impossible," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Madison had prepared for this denial. She pulled out her phone again, opening the camera app and switching to selfie mode. "Look at me, Mr. Ashworth, really look." She held the phone so they appeared side by side on the screen, and the resemblance was undeniable. The same angular jawline, the same pale green eyes, the same way their left eyebrow arched slightly higher than the right. Ashworth sank back into his chair, his usual commanding presence evaporating. "Elena was... That was 23 years ago. 23 years and 4 months, Madison corrected. She was pregnant when you offered her money to disappear from your life." "I offered her money for an abortion," Ashworth said quietly. "I thought Catherine and I were engaged. The merger with Mills Industries depended on that marriage. You couldn't let an inconvenient pregnancy destroy your business deal," Madison finished. "So you chose money over your own child?" Ashworth flinched as if she had slapped him. "It wasn't that simple. I was 25, drowning in debt, trying to keep my company afloat. Catherine's father controlled half the venture capital in Silicon Valley. Without that marriage, without that partnership, thousands of people would have lost their jobs. And now my mother is dying because we can't afford the treatments that might save her life, Madison shot back. Well, you have more money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes. I didn't know, Ashworth whispered. I didn't know about you, about her condition. If I had known, what? You would have helped. You've walked past me 1,000 times in this penthouse. You've seen me grow up in the corners of your life, and it never occurred to you to look closely enough to see yourself reflected back. Ashworth rose and walked to the window, staring out at the city lights. Your mother made it clear she wanted nothing from me. She took the money and vanished. I respected her decision. You convinced yourself she took the money and vanished, Madison countered. But she's been here all along, cleaning your home, managing your life, watching you live in luxury, while she struggled to raise your daughter alone. The silence stretched between them, heavy with years of unspoken truths. Finally, Ashworth turned back to face her. The poisoning, he said. How long has she been ill? The diagnosis came 4 months ago, stage 3 pancreatic cancer. The doctors said experimental treatments might extend her life, but insurance won't cover them. The out-of-pocket costs would be around $200,000. Ashworth's jaw tightened. 200,000. I spend more than that on wine in a year. She's not asking for charity, Madison said. In her mind, she's collecting on a debt you've owed for 23 years. By murdering me. By making you face your own mortality the way she's facing hers. She wanted you to understand what it feels like to be powerless, to have your body betray you, to know that all the money in the world can't buy you more time when time runs out. Ashworth walked to a painting on the far wall, a Monet that Madison knew cost more than most people's houses. Behind it was a hidden safe. He opened it and withdrew a folder, returning to his desk. I've had a private investigator monitoring Eleanor's life, he admitted. Not invasively, just periodic check-ins to make sure she was all right. Every year on your birthday I received a report. Madison stared at him in shock. You knew about me? I suspected. He opened the folder, revealing photographs spanning 17 years, Madison as a toddler, starting school at various ages. But suspecting and knowing are different things. I told myself I was just being cautious, making sure Eleanor was financially stable. I never allowed myself to consider that you might actually be your daughter. Yes. The word came out barely above a whisper. Madison felt a strange mix of anger and relief. You watched me grow up from a distance, but you never once tried to be part of my life. I was married to Catherine for 18 years. We tried to have children but couldn't. Every year these reports arrived, and I would see you growing more beautiful, more intelligent, and I would wonder. But I couldn't risk destroying my marriage on a suspicion. Catherine died 2 years ago, Madison pointed out. Cancer, Ashworth said with bitter irony. I spent millions on the best doctors, the most experimental treatments. None of it mattered in the end. The parallel wasn't lost on either of them. Madison watched emotions play across Ashworth's face, regret, guilt, and something that might have been hope. The investigator's report stopped when you turned 16, Ashworth continued. I told myself you were old enough that I didn't need to monitor your well-being anymore. But the truth was, I was afraid. The older you got, the more the resemblance became obvious. I was afraid that if I looked too closely, I would have to face what I had given up. Madison felt tears stinging her eyes. She's dying, Mr. Ashworth. My mother is dying, and she's convinced that poisoning you is the only way to make you acknowledge what you owe us. What do you want me to do? He asked. I want you to save her life, Madison said simply. I want you to be the father you never had the chance to be. I want you to prove that 23 years of absence doesn't mean you don't care. Ashworth nodded slowly. And the poisoning? What about Elena's plan? She doesn't know I dumped the tea. She's probably asleep, thinking that by morning you'll be dead or dying, and she'll have her revenge. What do you think will happen when she realizes I'm still alive? Madison had been dreading this question. I think she'll try again, or she'll confess and turn herself in. Either way, she's going to destroy herself unless someone stops her. Ashworth picked up his phone and began scrolling through contacts. Dr. Sarah Chen is the best oncologist on the East Coast. She's also a personal friend. If anyone can help your mother, she can. It's almost 10 p.m., Madison protested. Sarah doesn't sleep much, Ashworth replied, already dialing. And she owes me a favor. As the phone rang, Madison felt a shift in the atmosphere of the room. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just the housekeeper's daughter lurking in the shadows of this penthouse. She was Victor Ashworth's child, and he was finally acting like her father. Dr. Sarah Chen arrived at the penthouse at 11:30 p.m., her medical bag in one hand and a portable ultrasound machine in the other. Despite the late hour, she appeared alert and professional, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. "Victor, when you said it was urgent, I didn't expect a house call in Manhattan," she said, setting down her equipment in the living room. "The patient is Elena Carter, my housekeeper," Ashworth explained. "Stage 3 pancreatic cancer diagnosed 4 months ago. She's been receiving standard treatment, but I want to explore every possible option." Dr. Chen raised an eyebrow. "At midnight? Victor, what aren't you telling me?" Madison watched this exchange from the hallway, marveling at how quickly Ashworth had mobilized resources that would have taken her mother months to access through normal channels. A single phone call had brought one of the country's leading oncologists to their door within an hour. "The situation is complicated," Ashworth admitted. "Sarah, I'd like you to meet Madison Carter, Elena's daughter." Dr. Chen smiled warmly at Madison. "Hello, dear. I know this must be frightening, but your mother is in excellent hands. We'll do everything we can." "There's something else," Madison said quietly. "She's also my daughter." Dr. Chen's professional composure slipped for just a moment as she looked between Ashworth and Madison, noting the unmistakable resemblance. "I see. Well, that does complicate things, doesn't it?" "Elena doesn't know that Victor is aware of Madison's paternity," Ashworth continued. "She's been acting irrationally due to the stress of her diagnosis and financial pressures." Madison felt a stab of anger at this sanitized version of events. But she understood why Ashworth couldn't tell Dr. Chen about the poisoning. At least not yet. "Where is Elena now?" Dr. Chen asked. "Sleeping," Madison replied. "She's been exhausted lately. The treatments have been really hard on her. I'd like to examine her if possible. Review her medical records, discuss treatment options." Before Madison could respond, they heard footsteps in the hallway. Elena appeared in the doorway, wearing her robe and looking confused and frightened. "Maddie, what's going on? Who is this woman?" Elena's eyes darted between the medical equipment and Dr. Chen's professional attire. "Oh God, did something happen to Mr. Ashworth? Is he sick?" The irony of Elena's concern for Ashworth's health, given what she had planned for him, wasn't lost on Madison. "Mum, this is Dr. Chen. She's here to help you." "Help me? I don't understand. How did—" Elena's gaze shifted to Ashworth, who had emerged from his study. Her face went ashen. "Mr. Ashworth, why are you awake? You should be sleeping by now." "I had some trouble with my evening tea," Ashworth said carefully. "It seemed off somehow. I didn't finish it." Elena's eyes widened with panic. "Off? What do you mean off? I prepared it exactly the way you like it." "Perhaps we should sit down," Dr. Chen interjected, sensing the tension in the room. "Mrs. Carter, I understand you've been dealing with a cancer diagnosis. That's an enormous burden, and I'm here to discuss some treatment options that might not have been presented to you yet." "I can't afford experimental treatments," Eleanor said automatically. "My insurance won't be a factor," Ashworth interrupted. "I'm covering all medical expenses." Elena stared at him in shock. "You're what? Why would you do that?" "Because," Ashworth said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to reveal, "Madison is my daughter." The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She stumbled backward, gripping the doorframe for support. No, you don't get to do this. You don't get to swoop in now after 23 years and play the caring father. Elena, please, you threw us away." Eleanor's voice cracked with decades of suppressed rage. "You handed me an envelope full of cash like I was some problem to be solved, some inconvenience to be managed. You chose your precious business merger over your own child. Madison stepped between them. Mom, stop. This isn't helping anyone. Helping? Elena laughed bitterly. You want to help, Victor? Where were you when Madison had pneumonia when she was 5, and I couldn't afford to take time off work? Where were you when she needed school supplies, or when she cried because she was the only kid in her class without a father at the school play? Dr. Chen cleared her throat diplomatically. Perhaps I should return in the morning when everyone has had time to process. No, Madison said firmly. We're doing this now. All of it. She turned to face her mother. Mom, I know about digitalis. Elena's face went white. What are you talking about? I found the vial. I know you've been poisoning him for 3 weeks. And I know that tonight's dose was supposed to be the last one. Elena's composure completely crumbled. She slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor, tears streaming down her face. He deserved it, she whispered. He deserved to know what it feels like to be helpless, to have your body failing you, to face death alone. But he wouldn't have been alone, Madison said gently. I would have been here. I would have watched him die, and I would have known that my mother was a murderer. Ashworth knelt beside Elena, his face full of genuine remorse. You're right. I did deserve it. I was a coward 23 years ago, and I've been a coward ever since. I convinced myself that staying away was what was best for everyone, but the truth is I was protecting myself. I'm dying, Elena sobbed. I'm dying, and I wanted you to understand what that felt like. I wanted you to be afraid. I am afraid, Ashworth admitted. I'm terrified that I'm going to lose both of you before I have a chance to make any of this right. Dr. Chen had been listening to this exchange with growing understanding. She quietly unpacked her equipment and approached Elena. Mrs. Carter, may I examine you? I'd like to get a current assessment of your condition. Elena looked up through her tears. It's too late. The doctors said the tumors have spread. Doctors say a lot of things, Dr. Chen replied with a gentle smile. But I've seen people recover from conditions that were deemed hopeless. The field of oncology is advancing rapidly, especially in pancreatic cancer treatment. As Dr. Chen began her examination, Madison found herself alone with Ashworth in the hallway. The weight of the evening's revelations hung between them. What happens now? Madison asked. Now we focus on saving your mother's life, Ashworth replied. And then, if you're willing, we figure out how to be a family. It's not going to be easy, Madison warned. She's carried this anger for 23 years. It's not going to disappear overnight just because you're willing to pay for medical bills. I know. But Madison, I need you to understand something. Every year on your birthday, I would wonder what you were like. What you were interested in, whether you were happy, if you needed anything. I told myself I was respecting Elena's wishes by staying away, but the truth is, I was a coward. I was afraid that if I met you, I would want to be your father, and I didn't know if I deserved that right. Madison studied his face, seeing genuine regret mixed with hope. Do you want to be my father now? More than anything I've ever wanted in my life. From the living room, they heard Dr. Chen's voice. Mrs. Carter, I'm seeing some very encouraging signs. Your tumor markers are better than I expected, and there's a new immunotherapy protocol that's showing remarkable results in cases like yours. Elena's voice was barely audible. What does that mean? It means, Dr. Chen said, that we're going to fight this thing and we're going to win. Madison felt a surge of hope that she hadn't experienced in months. For the first time since her mother's diagnosis, the future looked like something more than a countdown to loss. But as she watched Elena's face, she could see that her mother's anger hadn't disappeared with the promise of treatment. If anything, Ashworth's sudden appearance as a savior seemed to have intensified her resentment. The real battle, Madison realized, wasn't going to be against cancer. It was going to be convincing her mother that forgiveness was possible, and that sometimes second chances were worth taking, even 23 years too late. 3 days after the confrontation, the penthouse felt like a different world. Elena had been admitted to Mount Sinai Hospital for a comprehensive evaluation, and the beginning of Dr. Chen's aggressive treatment protocol. Madison found herself caught between two realities: the sterile hospital rooms where her mother underwent tests and procedures, and the luxurious penthouse where her newfound father attempted to navigate their complicated relationship. "The initial scans are promising," Dr. Chen explained during their morning meeting in Ashworth's study. "The tumors are responding better than expected to the pre-treatment regimen. We'll know more after the genetic profiling is complete, but I'm cautiously optimistic about proceeding with the immunotherapy." Ashworth nodded, but Madison could see the tension in his shoulders. "And the timeline? If everything goes according to plan, we're looking at 18 months of treatment. Maybe longer, depending on how she responds." Dr. Chen closed her tablet and looked directly at Madison. "Your mother is a fighter. That's working in her favor." After Dr. Chen left, Madison found herself alone with Ashworth for the first time since that chaotic night. The silence between them felt heavy with unspoken questions and unresolved emotions. "I've been thinking about what you said," Ashworth began, settling into the chair across from her. "About me walking past you all these years without really seeing you." Madison tensed. She wasn't sure she was ready for another emotional revelation. "I want to show you something," he continued, walking to his desk and retrieving a different folder from the one he'd shown her before. This one was thicker, more worn. "These aren't from the private investigator." He opened the folder to reveal dozens of photographs, all taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. Madison recognized herself at various ages, walking to school, playing in the park near their old apartment, laughing with friends outside the public library. "You took these." Madison's voice was barely a whisper. "I told myself I was just checking on you, making sure you were safe." Ashworth's hands trembled slightly as he turned the pages. "But the truth is, I was trying to be part of your life in the only way I thought I could." Madison stared at a photograph of herself at age 12, reading a book on a park bench. The image was so clear, so carefully composed, that Ashworth must have been watching her for a long time before taking it. "This is stalking," she said quietly. "Yes," Ashworth admitted without defensiveness. "It was. I crossed lines I had no right to cross. I told myself I was being protective, but I was really just being selfish. I wanted to see you grow up, even if I couldn't be part of it." Madison flipped through more photos, each one a memory she'd experienced while unknowingly being observed by her father. "How often?" "Your birthday every year, sometimes on other occasions. When you started high school, when you won that science fair in 10th grade, when you got your driver's license." He paused. "I was there when you crashed your car last winter." Madison looked up sharply. "You were there?" "3 blocks away. I heard the ambulance dispatch on my police scanner and recognized the address. I got there before the paramedics." Ashworth's voice grew thick with emotion. "I watched them pull you out of that car, and for 10 minutes, I thought I might lose you before I ever had the chance to know you. But you didn't come forward. Even then, I called Elena from a blocked number and told her there had been an accident. I made sure she got to the hospital quickly." Ashworth closed the folder. "It wasn't enough. It was never enough. But it was all I allowed myself." Madison felt a complex mix of emotions, violation at being watched without her knowledge, but also a strange comfort in knowing that someone had been looking out for her, even from a distance. "The night Mom started poisoning you," Madison said slowly. "You knew something was wrong, didn't you?" Ashworth nodded. "I've been having irregular heartbeats for weeks. My personal physician ran tests, but everything came back normal. Then I started noticing that the symptoms were always worse after Elena served my evening tea." "Why didn't you confront her?" "Because I was afraid of what the answer might be. If Elena was trying to hurt me, there had to be a reason. And the only reason that made sense was—" He gestured between them. "You knew I was your daughter. I suspected. But suspecting and knowing are different things. As long as I never confirmed it, I could continue pretending that my choices 23 years ago hadn't destroyed 2 other lives." Madison stood up and walked to the window. looking down at the street where normal families lived normal lives. "Do you regret it? Having me?" "No," Ashworth said immediately. "Never. But I regret every single day that I wasn't brave enough to be your father." They were interrupted by Madison's phone buzzing. It was a text from Elena. "Come to the hospital. We need to talk." The ride to Mount Sinai was tense. Madison had visited her mother every day since the treatment began, but Elena had been distant, almost cold. The medical team's optimism seemed to have the opposite effect on Elena that it had on everyone else. Instead of hope, she appeared to be sinking deeper into depression. They found Elena sitting by the window in her private room, staring out at the city skyline. The IV drip attached to her arm made her look fragile, but her expression was alert and determined. "Madison, sit down." "Victor, you too." Eleanor's voice carried a strange formality. "There are things that need to be said." Madison exchanged a glance with Ashworth before taking the chair beside her mother's bed. Ashworth remained standing near the door, as if ready to flee if necessary. "The doctors are optimistic about my prognosis," Elena began. "Dr. Chen thinks there's a real chance I could beat this thing." "That's wonderful news, Mom." "Is it?" Elena turned to face them both. "Because I've been lying here for 3 days, thinking about what that means. If I survive this, if I get better, what happens then? Do I go back to cleaning Victor's house? Do I pretend that the last month never happened? Do I forget that I tried to murder him?" "Mom, you weren't thinking clearly." "The diagnosis, the stress, I was thinking perfectly clearly," Elena interrupted. "That's the problem. I tried to kill him, Madison. Not in a moment of passion, not in self-defense. I planned it methodically for weeks. I measured out doses designed to cause maximum suffering before death. That's not something you recover from. That's not something you forgive." Ashworth finally spoke. "Elena, what you did came from a place of desperation and pain. I understand." "No, you don't understand," Elena snapped. "You understand money. You understand business deals. You understand how to buy your way out of problems. But you don't understand what it's like to watch your child grow up wondering why her father didn't want her. You don't understand what it's like to work for the man who abandoned you, to clean his toilets and make his meals while your daughter asks why Daddy doesn't live with us." Madison felt tears stinging her eyes. "Mom, please, I'm not finished." Elena's voice grew stronger. "Victor, you want to play father now. You want to swoop in and save the day. Fine, but understand this. I will never forgive you. I will take your money for Madison's sake, because she deserves everything you owe her. But don't mistake my acceptance of your help for absolution." The room fell silent, except for the soft beeping of Elena's monitors. Madison looked between her parents, one consumed by guilt, the other by righteous anger, and realized that some wounds were too deep to heal, even with time and money. "What about us?" Madison asked quietly. What about our family?" Elena reached for her daughter's hand. "You have a father now if you want one. You have opportunities I could never give you. But don't ask me to pretend that this is some fairy tale ending where everyone learns to love each other." Madison felt something break inside her chest. After everything they had been through, after all the revelations and confessions, they were still fractured. Money could buy the best medical treatment, but it couldn't purchase forgiveness. Truth could set secrets free, but it couldn't heal decades of resentment. "So what do we do now?" Madison asked. Elena squeezed her hand. "Now we figure out how to be a family that's broken in new ways instead of old ones." 2 weeks after Elena's hospital confrontation, Madison received a phone call that changed everything again. Detective Rebecca Torres from the NYPD's Major Crimes Unit was calling about an incident involving Victor Ashworth and potential poisoning allegations. "Miss Carter, we need to speak with you regarding some serious criminal charges that may be filed," Detective Torres explained over the phone. "Can you come to the precinct this afternoon?" Madison's blood ran cold. "Criminal charges against who?" "I can't discuss details over the phone. Please bring a lawyer if you have one." When Madison arrived at the precinct 3 hours later with Ashworth's attorney, James Whitfield, she discovered that someone had anonymously tipped off the police about the poisoning. Security footage from the penthouse building, Medical records showing Ashworth's unexplained symptoms and suspicious purchases traced to Elena's credit card had built a compelling case. "Someone wants your mother prosecuted," Detective Torres explained, spreading files across the interrogation room table. "And they've done their homework." Madison stared at the evidence, photographs of Elena purchasing digitalis from an online pharmacy, timestamps showing her accessing Ashworth's study every evening, even a recording from the building's security system showing her disposing of something in the trash chute 3 weeks earlier. Who would have access to all this information? Attorney Whitfield asked. Detective Torres glanced at Madison. "Someone with significant resources and surveillance capabilities. Someone who was watching your family very closely." The implication hit Madison like a punch to the stomach. "Victor, he collected all this evidence. We believe Mr. Ashworth has been conducting his own investigation for several weeks," Torres confirmed. "The question is whether he intends to press charges." Madison felt sick. After everything they had been through, after his promises to help Elena, Ashworth had been building a criminal case against her mother. "I need to speak with him immediately." "Miss Carter," Whitfield warned, "anything you say to Mr. Ashworth about this matter could be used as evidence." "I don't care," Madison snapped. "This is my family we're talking about." She found Ashworth in his study that evening, exactly where she expected him to be. But instead of his usual composed demeanor, he looked haggard, almost defeated. "You turned her in," Madison said, without preamble. Ashworth looked up from his laptop. "No, I didn't. Don't lie to me. The police have security footage, medical records, purchase histories. That evidence came from you. The evidence exists because I've been documenting everything since I first suspected the poisoning," Ashworth admitted. "But I didn't give it to the police." "Then who did?" Ashworth closed his laptop and rubbed his temples. "I've been trying to figure that out for the last 6 hours. The only people who knew about the evidence were my head of security, my personal physician, and my attorney." "And me," Madison realized. "I knew about everything. You think you turned in your own mother?" "No, but—" Madison's mind raced through the possibilities. "Wait, who else has access to your security systems?" "My building management company handles routine maintenance, but they wouldn't have access to medical records or financial data." Ashworth paused. Unless what? Unless someone hacked my personal server. All of this information was stored on my private network." Ashworth opened his laptop again, fingers flying across the keyboard. "If someone gained access to my system, they would have had everything they needed to build a case." As he worked, Madison's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Ask your father about Catherine's death. Ask him who really had access to the digitalis." Madison's hands trembled as she showed Ashworth the message. His face went ashen as he read it. "Catherine," he whispered. "Oh God, Catherine. What about Catherine? You said she died of cancer." "She did. But in her final weeks, when the pain became unbearable, she asked me to help her end her suffering." Ashworth's voice cracked. "I couldn't do it. I couldn't be the one to... So I hired a private nurse, someone who would be discreet." Madison felt the pieces clicking into place. A nurse who would have access to medications like digitalis. Nurse Patricia Hawkins. She worked for Catherine for the last month of her life. She had access to all sorts of controlled substances, medical equipment, patient records. Ashworth's typing became more frantic. "If she still has access to my security system somehow, why would she care about exposing my mother?" Ashworth pulled up financial records on his screen. "Because I never paid her final invoice. Catherine's death was traumatic for me. I couldn't deal with the reminders. I had my accountant handle all the final bills. But Patricia's invoice was flagged because it included charges for services not covered by insurance." "You stiffed her." "I forgot about her completely." Ashworth ran his hands through his hair. "She tried to contact me multiple times about the unpaid balance. My assistant kept blocking her calls because I'd given instructions not to be contacted by anyone connected to Catherine's care." Madison's phone buzzed again with another message. "He owes me $47,000. Time to collect." "She's blackmailing you," Madison realized. She wants you to pay her, or she'll make sure my mother goes to prison for attempted murder. Ashworth immediately began typing on his laptop. I'm transferring the money to her account right now. Wait, Madison said, grabbing his wrist. We don't even know if that will stop her. What if she takes the money and still pursues the criminal charges? Then what do you suggest? Madison thought quickly. We need to turn the tables. If she had access to digitalis when she was caring for Catherine, if she helped Catherine die, that's assisted suicide. It's illegal in New York. Exactly. She's as guilty of a crime as my mother is. Maybe more guilty, because she's a medical professional who took an oath to do no harm. Ashworth stared at her with something approaching admiration. You want to threaten her with prosecution for helping Catherine die? I want to ensure mutual destruction. She can't expose my mother without exposing herself. Madison, Catherine's death was peaceful. Patricia helped end her suffering when I was too much of a coward to do it myself. I won't destroy her life to protect Elena, even if it means my mother goes to prison. The question hung in the air between them. Madison could see the conflict, playing out on Ashworth's face, loyalty to the woman who had helped his wife die with dignity versus protecting the woman who had tried to murder him. There might be another way, Ashworth said slowly. Patricia wants money. What if we give her more than she's asking for, but with conditions? What kind of conditions? A non-disclosure agreement. She gets paid, generously, in exchange for her silence about Elena's poisoning attempt. And she agrees to destroy any evidence she may have collected. Madison considered this. And if she refuses, then we all go down together. Patricia for assisted suicide, Elena for attempted murder, and me for covering up both crimes. Madison's phone buzzed a third time. You have 1 hour to decide. Pay me or Elena Carter gets arrested tonight. 1 hour, Madison repeated. Can you arrange the transfer that quickly? I can do it in 10 minutes. The question is whether we can trust her to keep her word. Madison looked at her father, because that's what he was now, despite everything, and saw not the confident billionaire who graced magazine covers, but a man who had spent 23 years making impossible choices and living with the consequences. We don't have a choice, she said. If my mother gets arrested tonight, she'll die in prison before her treatment is complete. Ashworth nodded and began typing. I'm transferring $100,000 to Patricia's account, along with a digital contract stating that this payment is in exchange for her permanent silence regarding any medical information she may have obtained during her employment. Will that hold up legally? Probably not. But it might be enough to scare her into backing down. As Ashworth completed the transfer, Madison realized that she was now part of a conspiracy to cover up multiple crimes. Her mother had attempted murder, Patricia had committed assisted suicide, and they were all now engaged in obstruction of justice. But sometimes, Madison thought, family meant choosing which laws to break and which secrets to keep. And sometimes, love meant protecting people from the consequences of their worst decisions. Even when they didn't deserve it, the question that remained was whether Patricia Hawkins would honor their agreement, or whether this was just the beginning of a much more dangerous game. Patricia Hawkins arrived at the penthouse exactly 1 hour after the money transfer, but she didn't come alone. Detective Torres and 2 uniformed officers accompanied her, their presence transforming the elegant lobby into an impromptu crime scene. Miss Carter. Mr. Ashworth, Detective Torres announced as they entered the penthouse. Patricia Hawkins has provided additional evidence regarding the poisoning case, as well as allegations of attempted bribery and obstruction of justice. Madison felt her world tilting. Patricia stood behind the officers, her grey hair pulled back severely, wearing scrubs that made her look like the medical professional she claimed to be. But her eyes held a coldness that Madison recognized, the same calculated fury that had driven her mother to poison. The money transfer was documented, Patricia said, her voice steady and professional. Mr. Ashworth attempted to buy my silence regarding Elena Carter's criminal actions. That constitutes obstruction of justice, Ashworth stepped forward, his composure remarkable given the circumstances. "Detective Torres, I'd like to make a statement." "Victor, don't say anything without your attorney present," Madison warned. "No," Ashworth said firmly. "This ends now." He looked directly at Patricia. "You're right. I did try to buy your silence, but not to cover up Elena's crime, to prevent you from manipulating a dying woman's desperation for your own financial gain." Patricia's professional mask slipped slightly. "I don't know what you're talking about. I spent the last hour investigating your background more thoroughly," Ashworth continued. "You've done this before, haven't you? Targeting wealthy families in crisis, gathering evidence of their secrets, then demanding payment for your silence." Detective Torres looked between them with growing interest. "Mr. Ashworth, are you alleging that Miss Hawkins has engaged in a pattern of extortion? The Pemberton family in Connecticut, the Rodriguezes in Miami, the Chens in San Francisco." Ashworth pulled out his phone, showing a screen full of financial records. All wealthy families who hired Patricia for end-of-life care, all of whom made large, unexplained payments to her after their loved ones died. Patricia's face hardened. Those were legitimate medical consultations that coincidentally occurred after you gained access to their private security systems, their financial records, their family secrets. Ashworth's voice grew stronger. "You're not a whistleblower, Patricia. You're a predator." Madison watched this unfold with a mixture of relief and terror. Ashworth was turning the tables, but at the cost of exposing even more family secrets. "That's irrelevant to the current charges," Patricia shot back. "Elena Carter attempted to murder Mr. Ashworth with digitalis, the same medication I had access to while caring for his wife. The same medication that you're now suggesting I've used inappropriately with other patients." The room fell silent as the implications of Patricia's words sank in. She had just admitted to having access to digitalis while caring for multiple patients, some of whom had died under her care. Detective Torres cleared her throat. "Ms. Hawkins, I think we need to have a separate conversation about your medical practices." But Patricia wasn't finished. "You want to know the real crime here? Elena Carter discovered that Victor Ashworth was her daughter's father 23 years ago. She's been working in his house, cleaning his toilets, serving his meals, while he lived in luxury and denied his own child," she snapped. And honestly, who wouldn't? Madison felt a strange surge of gratitude toward Patricia for defending her mother, even while trying to destroy their family. "That doesn't justify attempted murder," Detective Torres pointed out, "doesn't it?" Patricia's voice rose. "How many people has Victor Ashworth destroyed with his business practices? How many families has he bankrupted? How many lives has he ruined in pursuit of profit? Elena Carter tried to give him a taste of his own medicine, literally." "Enough," Ashworth said quietly. "Detective Torres, I'm not pressing charges against Elena Carter." Everyone in the room stared at him in shock. "Victor, what are you doing?" Madison whispered. "I'm taking responsibility for my choices," Ashworth replied. "Elena didn't try to murder a stranger. She tried to murder the man who abandoned his pregnant girlfriend and spent 23 years pretending his daughter didn't exist." "Patricia's right. I deserved what Elena did to me," Detective Torres frowned. "Mr. Ashworth, attempted murder is a serious crime regardless of motivation." "Then arrest me too," Ashworth said. "I've been stalking Madison for 17 years, taking photographs of her without consent, invading her privacy. I've engaged in cyber-stalking, harassment, and now attempted bribery. If you're going to prosecute Elena for her crimes, prosecute me for mine." Madison realized what her father was doing. He was forcing the justice system to treat them as a family. Either they all faced consequences for their actions, or none of them did. Patricia's confidence began to waver. "This is ridiculous. You can't just decide not to press charges because you feel guilty." "Actually, I can," Ashworth replied. "And furthermore, I'm filing a restraining order against you, Patricia. You're not to contact anyone in my family again." "Your family?" Patricia laughed bitterly. "You mean the woman who tried to kill you and the daughter you never acknowledged?" "Yes," Ashworth said simply. "My family. The words hung in the air with unexpected power. Madison felt something shift inside her chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but recognition. They were damaged, complicated, and probably beyond repair in conventional terms. But they were connected by blood, by secrets, by choices both terrible and brave. Detective Torres closed her notebook. This case is becoming too complex for a simple arrest. I'm going to need to consult with the district attorney about how to proceed. She looked at Patricia. Ms. Hawkins, you'll need to come with us for questioning about your medical practices with other families. As the police led Patricia away, Madison found herself alone with Ashworth in the penthouse that had started this whole complicated mess. What happens now? Madison asked. Now we visit your mother and tell her she's not going to prison, Ashworth replied. And then we figure out how to be a family that's honest about being broken. 3 months later, Eleanor completed her first round of immunotherapy with promising results. The tumors had shrunk significantly and Dr. Chen was optimistic about long-term remission. Elena still worked for Ashworth, but now as his personal assistant, rather than housekeeper, a role that paid enough to cover her, ongoing medical expenses and Madison's college. Tuition. The relationship between Elena and Ashworth remained strained, professional rather than personal. They had agreed to coexist for Madison's sake, but forgiveness was still beyond reach for both of them. Madison had started her senior year of high school with a college fund, a father who attended her soccer games, and a mother who was fighting cancer with the best medical care money could buy. It wasn't the fairy tale ending she might have imagined, but it was real and complicated and theirs. Some stories don't end with forgiveness. Some families find their way back to each other, not through love, but through mutual recognition of shared damage. And sometimes the most honest thing you can say about a happy ending is that everyone survived to fight another day. The chamomile tea sat untouched on Victor Ashworth's desk each evening now, cooling slowly as he worked late into the night. But Madison had replaced the digital poison with something far more dangerous, the possibility that people could change, that secrets could be spoken aloud, and that even the most broken families could choose to stay broken together rather than broken apart. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.